big ready.
It helps having something where I just like hold it like this.
Yeah. Keep it in the right spot. Welcome back to another episode of Friends Living Well.
Good to have you here.
Great to have you guys. We are two therapists that happen to be best friends that like talking about our friendship and mental health and all that fun stuff.
And everything in between.
And everything in between. Disclaimer, we are not diagnosticians and this isn't therapy. If you need therapy, don't listen to a podcast. Don't do it. Don't.
My mind just went into everything that we could say that we are not. We are not ice cream makers.
We are not farmers. We're not fashionistas. We're not rocket scientists.
We are not professional organizers.
We're not even good at jujitsu.
I'm good at smothering people, though. That part I am good at.
She's smothered me many times in jujitsu when it's okay and I'm consenting to it.
Speaking of, let's put some BJJ talk in there.
Yeah.
I heard it was Tom Hardy. That's who said it. Somebody asked him in an interview, "What's your favorite submission?"
It's the smother tap.
And he was like, "I just really like to smother people." I've never resonated harder.
Honestly, it's like so easy once you're there. Yeah. That's the other thing.
Yeah,
but I never do it because I just feel so uncomfortable putting my boobs, right? My boobs in somebody's face.
I mean, there's so many body parts you can use to smother. You can use their body parts to smother them.
That's true. It's just usually I'm in mount and it's just right there.
Yeah.
And it's usually a guy and I'm like, they're gonna like this, so I'm not gonna do it.
Not gonna.
Maybe they would hate it. I don't know.
I mean, I've used an elbow before to smother. Like, let's fill that hole.
Whoa, okay.
Put that on a rash guard.
Let's definitely.
Zoom in.
Oh my god. The dogs are being really good in these episodes, I gotta say.
Next time we'll have Elliot on every episode.
Yeah, Elliot needs to be. He would just sleep. He would be so good.
Tell us your secrets.
But we had to put Elliot in jail for this episode because he's so loud all the time. He never stops making noise. So yeah, this is a fun podcast. It brings a lot of weird elements, just like that segue we had. And we wanted to continue our discussion about anxiety, depression.
Yeah, we have a few questions too that people submitted that feels like it's gonna bring us in the next direction of it.
Yeah, which I did summarize some of them for you, but I'm gonna kind of bring it back for this episode. We like to do Q&As on Instagram, so if you guys would interact with that would be really fun.
Heck yeah, any kind of questions or even scenarios or
stuff you just want us to talk about is really fun. We really like the interactiveness, and we already have like a couple of really loyal listeners.
Thank you guys.
Like my friend Lauren, she texts me every time she listens to it. She's like, I'm getting back to my Friends Living Well listening.
And the feedback is the best. We live for it.
The feedback is the best. It makes our hearts really happy.
Absolutely.
So a lot of the themes of the questions on the Instagram were very somatic focused. So I'm going to read them out loud. And I'm going to let Nikita just like get her freak on when she talks about this stuff because she's really smart. This is her jam. So Ashley asked an awesome question, which is, how do anxiety and depression manifest differently in the body? We actually already talked about that in the previous episode. So I think that was the one we just did was episode 6, correct, Tom? So
yeah,
if you want an answer to that question, go listen to episode 6. Larry asked, how come every time I get super anxious, I start pissing out of my ass?
And what was the other one? There was one more that was related to like stress response, I remember.
Yeah, for people that don't get that, he's talking about diarrhea.
Yeah. If you don't get that.
Just kidding. The first thing I do is stop eating when I'm anxious. It's like my body isn't hungry.
So that I find interesting because like that first one stands out to me as the stress response, which I know we've gone over before, but that's your fight or flight. That's your body doing good things. Essentially, it's preparing you for action and deciding if action state is even going to be actually needed. So all the things that you do for survival, your eyes dilate, your heart starts pumping faster, so blood gets to your muscles and your brain, so you're thinking more quickly. And another feature is that you stop digesting food. It's so that way your body is not spending energy doing things which actually requires a lot of energy to digest your food, and instead it's using all of its resources to get you into fight or flight right away. So that completely makes sense that if your fight or flight is being responded to, that's where people say, like, I get thirsty out of nowhere, or I have to go to the bathroom all of a sudden, or there's a lot of sensations like that can come up right out of nowhere almost.
I love that you said that, because I was reading those questions and I was in my head, I was like, well, I don't really know the answers to this, but if I were to
I bet you know,
guess an answer, I was going to relate it to like survival mechanisms, basically, right? Like what is because I think when we talk about like anxiety specifically, like stress, it's like perceived threat, right? So if I am, and I talk about this with the kids that I work with, is like, especially ones that are very demand sensitive, their perception of stress is like everything's stressful, right? So I could be asking you to pick up your shoes off of the ground, but you're perceiving that as a stressor, as a threat, and so then your fight or flight is getting activated.
Absolutely.
So yeah, I was thinking about it in terms of kind of like survival. So I hope that was helpful to hear, because it's normal. So you're saying too, the is expressing your bowels, basically, like, is that survival?
So that's where I'm going to take that one. To me, calls out as distress. Like if you're and that's why that definition is so important as a difference to me, because being in a little bit of fight or flight, being stress responsive, and that doesn't mean that it's a bad thing. You're just preparing yourself to go into action. We've covered this, but if you are in a position where you're in too much stress, you feel like you're not able to handle that, and it's been prolonged, that's where you're going to have more somatic features. And especially in my high functioning folks, that is where you are really, really good at managing and maintaining a lot of stressors, and you put one foot in front of the other, and then it catches up with you, and your body will be the first one to do it. And that'll be that colds that you can't heal from. Why have I had a cold for 2.5 months? It's because you're not resting enough. You're not giving yourself what you actually need. So there's a lot of cues like that. And stomach is, that's one of my first go-tos. Specifically an acidy stomach. That's the first thing I will notice, is I produce more acid, which then irritates my lining, which then gets my entire system irritated, so on and so forth. Then you get upset stomach, a whole lot.
Well, and it's funny about what you're saying about those like high functioning people, is that's what's so interesting about looking at some of these features of these diagnoses and experiences, because in American society specifically, there's a lot of value placed on go productivity. People get a lot of value from killing themselves at work, right? And so I feel like I know a lot of like highly successful people that are also miserable, because they've kind of taken this fight or flight and they've like adapted and like learned to live with it and like made it functional.
Yes.
So like, I'm highly anxious, I have obsessive thoughts, but that makes me really good at my job, because if I'm working in like a corporate office,
great strengths
there's a lot of strengths, right? So a lot of people can be using it to their advantage, but your body's the first to break down.
Absolutely. It'll be the first one to give you signs that you are ignoring something emotionally, or if nothing else, like a mental stressor that probably needs a little bit more attention paid to it.
So that's that's where we also always talk about like cueing into yourself, right? Like if you have a year or 6 months or 3 months where you're like, damn, like I've had a cold, I've had disruptive sleep. I, have had a lot of heartburn.
Migraines are another one. Tension, like a body pain tension. I feel like ones that I hear a lot of times are lower back, shoulders, and jaw.
Oh, yeah.
Neck pain, that's another one that I'm constantly hearing about. Also, just an upset stomach. Like, it doesn't even need to be necessarily something. Like, you can just have weird bowel movements, and you can just have extra gassiness and bloatedness.
Oh, yeah.
I could even get into a topic of cortisol and what that does to your body when we're in distress levels for too long. But that could be a whole other...
I would love to talk about that, because I would love to talk about, like, you know that I love talking about, ACEs and trauma effects on the brain and what that means for children and children's emotional regulation skills, so that could be a fun topic. There's always going to be a fun topic for us to talk about.
It reminds me of just to come back on it, of just what a scale these things are. Same with features to diagnosis, or a symptom to a diagnosis. Severity of this can be as minor as, something just scared me, or I'm anticipating that presentation I'm doing tomorrow, so I feel my heart go a little bit more, which is no biggie, to I've been worried about my finances for the past 3 months, and it wakes me up at night, and then I wake up and I diarrhea and I can't eat anything.
Yeah, exactly.
This is the scale of things.
It's a big scale. And I think that, and I'd be interested to know your thoughts on this, but I'm also curious, people that maybe have more chronic illnesses, how many of those people have experienced a traumatic event? Because, I know people that experience some significant trauma around a certain period of time, and then all of a sudden it's like, I'm dairy sensitive, gluten sensitive, can't eat anything. So I don't know if that's... I don't know what research
You're getting my mind going on it. There's a good amount of research on it, but it's just making me think how much, especially with trauma symptoms, or maybe just in general, it's so much easier sometimes to pick up the physical symptoms than the emotional ones.
Yeah, it's like we don't ask the why, right? So it's like, and I think the why is so important because, we look at people and we're working with individuals, and I think they look to us for the why, but sometimes there's even like a more hidden, deeper meaning to that, like I've been trying to incorporate more of that into my work, as a BCBA, like really looking at more of the why and like who the little person is in front of me, because, you get so used to just like looking like behavior, reduce, increase. And then it's like, but why?
What are we doing here?
Like, is it jealousy? Is it feelings of inadequacy? Is it, all these other things and drivers? So
the root.
Yeah, I think it's important to look at the root, because I think, I don't know, I feel like a theme we talk about a lot is like looking at the root of things, being in tune with yourself, being in tune with your body, because I feel like that's where a lot of like healing work is done.
Yeah, that connection. What feels like truths to me. I don't know why that word always resonates, but when I get to that place, it feels like a truth.
Yeah. So I think that we're going to keep talking about depression a little bit. There was another question that I thought was a great one that I'm not sure how I didn't say it already, but how to communicate to others when you feel yourself becoming depressed. So that was a bit of an outlier. There's somatic symptoms, but the question is, how do I let somebody know that I'm like not good right now?
And my first thought about that is because I feel like everybody's so different in how they do that. Like, some people are really good at reaching out and saying, I'm not doing good. You're good at that. You're really good at saying, like, I'm not happy today. I don't like this thing today. Yeah. I don't want this.
Yeah. If I'm angry, everybody gonna know it.
Right. I'm much more of I just won't answer my phone that day.
Yeah.
You just won't really.
Yeah, you just kind of fade into the abyss. But you're also very boundaried with your phone, where I'm not. And so sometimes I'm like, it's just Nikita being Nikita. And then there's other times where I'm like, sometimes there's been a time where I think I blinked and I'm like, I haven't heard from her in 4 days. What the?
Yeah, I count on that.
What the heck?
Oh yeah, my little depression gremlin counts on that.
Yeah.
Because I do know that people know that of me. My personality very genuinely is like, I would throw this thing into a lake if it didn't have all my pictures on it, especially of my dog.
So true. I personally, because I am very communicative and I do think that that's my personality, and I'm self-aware, which is also something that I think can be some of my strengths sometimes. I like to give cues to people of like maybe something I may say or do that might clue you into my state of mind without me saying it. For example, I've said this to Tom and I've said this to you. If I am ever watching Grey's Anatomy rewatch, I am going through something.
It's where we text each other. We're like, things are not okay.
Yeah. So that's like, if you catch me, or I'm saying
inflicting trauma upon yourself by watching Grey's Anatomy.
If I'm watching Grey's Anatomy, you need to be like, what's wrong with you? So I don't know if that's a helpful indicator for people of like, clue your friends and family in of like, oh, maybe I do this thing sometimes, because sometimes you might not be aware of it. You know what I mean? Sometimes it might creep up on you.
That's why that's where I started of some people are better at knowing, and other people, mine will start in a genuine place of like, I just don't, I'd rather do that thing right now, and then I'll get back to it.
Remember when you were watching Grey's Anatomy last time?
Yeah.
Around your birthday.
Yeah, I was watching Grey's Anatomy around my birthday because I was not happy. I was really sad. That's why I'm like, bitches better check on me. What was the other thing that I was going to say? Oh, I was going to say, some people are not as good at knowing when they're like in that state or shifting into that mode. And I think that's something that I've talked to Tom about, and not necessarily depression wise, but like I think I've had a conversation with you where I've been like, I think you're having a bad day. Like, you just keep saying these things. Yeah, where I'm like, I think that you're like upset about this thing, or like you're off in some way. And I can't remember the specific example, but I remember us having that conversation where you had ended up coming back to me being like, you know what, I think you're actually right. I think I am upset about X, Y, and Z.
Me?
Tomothy.
Yeah, I mean, being able to see it in one another is a great tool if it's there. I guess it just stands out to me of how much it's not. Like, depression is such an easy thing that not everybody is going to see. And yes, I think your significant other, if they're around, can see it, or family members, if they're around you, can see it. But
yeah,
one of the first things, and I guess that's why I keep coming back to that idea of like, people tend to isolate in depression, is if they're around you, you can see it, great. But if they're not, that's a huge indicator in itself. And people tend to isolate. Yeah. Most of all in depression. So then my question for that person would be like, do they know that of themselves? Do other people know that of them, for when they do start to isolate? What is the line for them? Like, for me, I have a 3-day rule. If I have 2 days and I don't really feel like getting around to messages, and I just don't have the energy, I don't give myself a hard time, I don't ask myself a lot of questions as to why. But if I get to that 3rd day, and I still am just like, that's always like a cue to me of like, okay, maybe this is just a busy week, but or maybe mood wise something is going on there, and pay attention of how many responses you're having that feel that heaviness associated with it too.
So I think that the thing that is coming up for me as you're saying these things is like, it's important to have self-awareness so you can almost like advocate for yourself, or you can give clues, or you can kind of give like tips and tricks to your loved ones, maybe people that you're not as close with, or maybe you have a long distance best friend, right? But it also sounds so important that the people in your life take the time to understand you and understand your patterns to see for you. So like that is, I don't think I guess I'm trying to say the onus isn't completely on you. Like, you need to be a part of your own like advocacy and healing, and people won't know, but it always goes back to that like thing that people post online about, which is like, check on your strong friends. You know, ask the how are you, and when you're asking how are you, make fucking eye contact.
Or even just be direct and say, I'm concerned about you. I want to know, like, are you depressed? How are you feeling? Where's your mood at? Like, ask the questions, especially if you know somebody has a history of depression or suicidality. Ask them directly, are you having any thoughts of harming yourself?
Yeah.
Do you want to talk to me about it?
Yeah.
You're not doing any harm by asking that question.
No. And I think, what is the hotline that people can text if they're experiencing? Is it 411?
Yeah.
I think 411. If you text 411, you get connected with crisis resources.
That's like the national line.
That's the national, I think, suicide prevention line. So that's a really good resource to have.
Yeah. We should make sure we include them in the even more local.
No, it's not 411?
It's for reporting crimes.
What? Really?
It's a national.
611? It's something that's one.
It's a national program that allows people to anonymously send crime tips.
Okay, can you Google like national? My mind is so true. Can you national like crisis hotline?
988.
Okay, so I fucked that all up. Why did I think it was 411?
I thought it was
What
that.
isn't there a number?
Because of
Anyway.
emergency, it's supposed to be associated with emergency, and maybe at one point it was, and that might even be why they
Can
changed
you
it. But
cut all this out? Yeah. Yes. 988 is the actual national crisis hotline that you can text and be connected to resources. I felt so sure of that too.
I did too. When you said it, I was like, "That sounds right," and then I was like, "Is it right?"
That's
though?
how delusional your besties are. That they'll just be like, "Yep, that's right.
Anything you
no
say.
question about it."
Anything that comes out of your mouth is perfect.
Yeah, and amazing. Yeah. So, okay. So I think to summarize a bit, Dennis just sighed so hard. To summarize a bit, I think there's a lot of different scales of symptoms when it comes to depression. I think a lot of people experience physical signs of these experiences and feelings and chemical imbalances and all that good stuff.
Agreed. And your emotions will technically happen first, and they are a sensation technically themselves too, but I find that it's the physical stuff, especially the painful stuff, the uncomfortable physical sensations, that people notice first before they pay attention to all those other things.
Yeah. So those were really good questions. I thought
Really
that they
good
were
questions.
great questions, and I loved that they kind of had a theme, because it just shows me, we know this to be true, but it shows me that there is a collective experience that other people are having with mental health issues, that if you just talk about it, you'll start finding common patterns and features.
I know,
which
that's why I
seems
want
to
to
be
keep
a
doing that.
trend of episode 6 and now episode 7.
There's a place that feels like we could add on to for this that I know you wanted to talk about regarding the 1/3 rule.
Yeah. Tell me about like what your experience and understanding and application of the 1/3 rule is.
Yeah, I love that one. It's such like a simple rule of thumb, and it feels like it was addressing more of that last question of like, how do I know what to communicate? When do I know what to communicate? And I get asked this one a lot of like, where should the line be of how much I experience sadness or happiness or anything? And Alexia Papa, she's an Olympic track star. She has a really famous clip that talks about this.
That's exactly who I know this from.
Yes, and she's also somebody I very much recommend as a positive influencer. As
cool.
Somebody she has a really great page with. I would just recommend her to everybody, but. She does a really great job of explaining this. It's a pretty simple concept. It can apply to all kinds of things. One of the ways is in training. So if you want to know, am I doing a good job at training, at running my training program, say in a month, a great measurement for that is to look back and use 1/3. So in training, that would be to look back and go, in this past month, 1/3 of the time, my trainings have been really hard and have absolutely kicked my ass. They've been very challenging to me. That's also where we're going to grow. And then 1/3 of the time, they've been kind of like not my hardest workouts in the world, but not my easiest workouts in the world. And then that last category is going to be like easy ones, like those days that you were kind to yourself, maybe a little, you knew you didn't get a good night's sleep or whatever beforehand, so you take it a little bit easier.
Yeah.
And if you have about a third of all of those things, you know you're training pretty well. You can be pretty confident that you're doing what you need to do.
Yes.
And that's especially important because if you are doing more than that, like say if you are having half of your training days kick your ass, you're going to get burned out. You're going to get injured. Something is going to happen.
Yeah. And maybe you're training out of your capacity.
100%. That's what it is.
Right.
And a lot of times our egos will get us to do that, especially in training. Like we'll push because we're going to get better. We're going to get stronger. We're going to get bigger. We're going to, whatever that is.
Yeah.
And then the same is the opposite. If we have too many days, if I look in the past month and I'm like, I've had way too many days where it was easy, light.
Yes.
I didn't challenge myself. That means we're not growing. We're not evolving. We're probably getting ourselves locked into a box, which is going to make us really anxiety prone. So then when we want to go and change that thing.
Yeah.
And so again, that 1/3 rule, it's just a way of looking at balance. And it started with a training idea to be able to, but
with like Olympic athletes, basically.
Yeah. And I've just always applied that to happiness, like that concept of happiness or how much depression or how much anxiety. I'm like, well, you know, 30 your days, you should have days where you're like, oh, I had a great mood. Like I was really happy. I felt really fulfilled or whatever that is for you.
Yeah.
And then you should have a third of the days where you're like, it wasn't the worst day, but it wasn't the best day either. It was a mixed bag.
Yeah.
And then you're going to have a third of the days where you're like, I was a human being and I had really existential thoughts and
lay down
stressors and.
Yeah. And I use that the same exact thing, right? Where we want to find a balance and how can we maybe quantify a balance? I use that in terms of when I'm doing caregiver training, which is most of my job right now, is, you know, how many good days are you having with your children? Like how many, like, are you having more connected, you know, enjoyable days, or are you having more really, 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 really rough days? And so when you're in the trenches and like going through this everyday battle, it is really hard to like, you know, zoom out 30,000 feet and actually objectively be like, oh, but there was 1/3 of the time really, really good days. Good. So I use that as a reframe for my caregivers. And if I'm having that conversation where I'm like sensing hopelessness and we're having like maybe a couple back-to-back consults in which it's just like, it's feeling like those ass kicking days are maybe not 33%, they're like 66%. That might be a time where I ask the caregivers to start taking data. Even like something as simple, and I think this could be applied to anybody tracking mood or whatever, right? Totally. Is like put a smiley face, middle face, sad face, and like let's count them up at the end of the month.
Yes.
Right? Or, you know, or we could quantify like 0 to 50% of the day I felt this, or 50 to 100% of the day I felt this, right? Because I also like to ask them to break it down into not a full day, but like if it's a bad morning, it's a bad morning, but doesn't mean it's going to be a bad night, right? So I use the 1/3 rule to help reframe perspective of like progress
and how all these things can be involved.
Yeah, because I think it's helpful. Like as we've talked about in our discussions of stress versus distress, like we are never going to live in a world in which we are not experiencing challenges.
Something, right?
So if presence of challenge doesn't mean there's something wrong.
It's a good thing.
But presence of challenge, 66% of the time, that's, you know, clinically significant, impacting, functioning in all these areas. That's a flag that maybe something needs to be altered. So that is maybe you're somebody that doesn't have a diagnosis. Maybe you teeter, right? And maybe you're not sure if you have the right diagnosis. Yeah. Maybe that would be a question to kind of ask yourself, is like, where do I fall?
And as you even say that, on the opposite end of that is people that put like too much pressure of happiness means that most of the time I am happy. That's another place I'm always really surprised by. I guess it's that depression existential lens for me, but other people are like, oh, well, I'm not being a successful human being or a happier, fulfilled human being unless like 80-90% of my time I'm like pretty happy and content with things.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's just not realistic. But if you go to that like about 1/3, people are like, yes, that actually does feel much more obtainable and realistic for me, that I can have 1/3 of my day be this, 1/3 of my week, 1/3 of my month be this, and I can still be okay.
And I think that like for most people, thinking and feeling in absolutes is comfy. We love it. We love to be comfortable. So if I can just say happiness is this thing, then it's a goal I can achieve. Right? Whereas what we're saying is like it's actually somewhere in the middle. Yeah. And middle is good, and being uncomfortable is good, and not being able to, like, happiness is not a thing you do. I don't think it's a goal you check. It's not like you write it on your resume.
I don't think so either. And it even feels like it's also acceptance of, I like my existentialism. Like, I like, as hard as those questions get, like, especially when we go to like grief and loss, like those are probably the hardest.
Yeah.
But I love that part of my brain and my human experience, that matters so much to me, and that I can go to those places too.
Yeah. I don't know why this is coming up, but I like posted this on my Instagram story today. Is like, you can't hate yourself into somebody you love.
Ain't gonna work.
You can't fucking fight to be 80 to 90% happy and be happy.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
we have so many examples of that in the world, of people that just like force themselves or fought, and then they're like, why aren't I?
Yeah, it's like, oh, well, but I have the house, and I have the dog, and I have the partner, and I have the... Why am I not happy? It's never about those things to begin with, I would argue.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think the 1/3 rule is something that you can apply to literally every aspect of your life. And I think for me, as the anxious overthinker struggling in the present moment, to try and dial it back and take that zoom out, really helpful reframe that slows me down. That's like, oh, it's not a bad life, right? It's a bad moment. Yeah. My life doesn't suck. It just sucks right now. You know? I mean, I'm gonna say it's gonna suck. I'm gonna complain about it.
I'm gonna pout a little bit. I'm gonna make some fists.
Look at the shirt I'm wearing. I'm gonna complain. I'm being really brave about it.
Super brave and tough.
Yeah, that was you're so smart, dude. It's so crazy. I love the way you think about things.
Your big old brain, my big old brain. Should be doing big old brain things.
Yeah. That's what we do on this couch with this dog and these mics.
And this DSM.
I
woke up in a new Bugatti.
I have not listened to that song in so long.
One of my favorite things to do is just to wake up and then just start singing out whatever is playing in my head.
Tom does that. Tom just be singing. His newest
always going.
His newest goof is like basically doing like quick little like song parodies, but like he'll just take like one line from a famous song and just like make it really inappropriate.
Just entertain the hell out of himself with it.
And sometimes he'll just send me the audio message, and it's really funny because there's no context, there's nothing that we're talking about, and then he's just like singing Chapel Roan with like new lyrics. And
you won him over though.
Who doesn't like Chapel Roan?
When he does it, you're just like, I won.
Yeah, I love her.
Chapel would be so proud of you too.
Oh, I love her. She's great. I think she's like nominated for like 1 million Grammys.
Do you think people call her Chat? Yeah, Chappy. Chat.
Well, I think it's basically her drag name, basically, because that's not her real last name.
Chappy.
Chappity, chippity, chap.
Chap. What are you chapping over there, Chat?
I got an audible wow from Tom. That's how bad that was.
Looking up those Grammy nominations.
Yeah, she's nominated for like Best Pop Album of the Year, right?
Impressive.
Or something? Or Best Pop Artist of the Year?
Pop solo performance, pop vocal album.
She should win that shit. And I swear if Sabrina Carpenter wins that, I'm going to burn this place to the ground because Chapel obviously is better. I mean, I love Sabrina Carpenter, don't get me wrong.
I just imagined you being smaller than Sabrina Carpenter and she's so tiny as is, and then you trying to set her on.
We have to be the same height. Did you see she like dressed up as Tinkerbell for Halloween and I was like, this is so cute. I wish I could have like stupid money so I could wear like platform diamond shoes and, you know, have a place to do it. But that's not my life. This is my life.
Maybe that'll be your life next October.
Lifetime. I think next lifetime for us, like we're just gonna be fucking.
I went next year. You went next lifetime.
We're gonna be worms in the ground, bro.
I want to be a dog.
I would love to be a dog.
Maybe
we've already been dogs. We don't even know it.
That would explain a lot.
Maybe we've been best friends as dogs for like ever, and this is the first time. Oh my god, this is the first time we've ever been humans and best friends.
If we had $1 million, we would make a Hallmark movie about that.
I was actually
two best friends. Best friends in this life and every other four-legged life but before them.
Your voice is so good.
A Hallmark movie, $17.
I was actually, speaking of Hallmark movies, I was actually going to warn Tom, because we're going to Thanksgiving at my parents' house, that my mom loves Hallmark movies. Loves them. So that might be on the television. And he might have to just like be like, oh my god, I love it. I know you're not going to do that. That's not you.
I just imagine Timothy with his middle finger out at the Hallmark TV the entire time.
No, you still have to, there's still got to be a little performative actions here. We might have to muscle through.
There's a lot packed in
we might have to muscle through. Trips. Yeah, so I'm going to Thanksgiving at my parents' house in Tennessee.
Thanks.
Which I am actually looking forward to now that we're getting closer. You know, it's easy, like, as you anticipate something, to be like, oh, the travel, oh, the this, oh, the that.
It's a long drive for you, too.
Yeah, now that we're getting closer, I'm feeling more excited, and I love Thanksgiving food.
It's such a fun holiday.
All I ever want to eat. I could eat Thanksgiving food all year round. It's
my favorite. I just cook all day. I just stand in the kitchen.
And just be eating.
I just be podcasting and
we just be
cooking.
Eating. Yeah. Yeah, so we should probably talk about the other thing.
Yeah, what are we here for?
So we also, as a part of like discussing depression, we wanted to talk about seasonal affective disorder.
Yes.
Because I think we should talk about seasonal affective disorder in like a bunch of different contexts. But I would say to the layperson, when we transition into winter, there's so much discussion about lack of light and vitamin D and all these things. And so I feel like you could talk to anybody that you work with or exist with and be like, what do you know helps for the winter? And they're going to be like, oh, I need more sun. I need more light. I need more this. So I think it would be fun to talk about, like, do sad lamps work?
Yes.
Do those low lamps work?
I'm really curious because I know that you were looking up a little bit of info.
Yeah, I'm going to share some research, but I also think that it would be, you know, we're being very technical in this episode, like we were in episode 6, where I pull out my DSM and I read you guys stuff out of the DSM.
She official.
Because I think I like defining. Defining feels comfy for me because I want to make sure people have a foundation to start from.
Yeah, these are the things that insurance companies and everybody else bases it on.
Yeah. Why were you giving me such a funny look?
Semantic.
Yeah, you do like semantics. Tom just made a comment about semantics. I like starting from semantics and definitions because if we're starting on the same playing field, then I feel like we can better participate in a conversation together. Mm-hmm. So I like to start with a definition.
Some boundaries. Make sure we understand one another.
Yeah, well, and I think what was also interesting was I couldn't find this in the DSM. I had the hardest time. I went in the index. I went, you know, we had to Google it. And it's because it's housed under depressive disorders in the DSM. So the DSM, which we talked about more in depth in episode 6. If you don't understand, Google it or listen to episode 6 or do both. But housed under the umbrella of depressive disorders are all these other diagnoses. Within major depressive disorder, which is its own diagnosis, there's all these what they call kind of like distinguishing features. What do they call it? Specifiers is what they call them. So they say, what are specifiers for depressive disorders? And they talk about all these things. So one of the things is with seasonal patterns. So they're saying with major depressive disorders, with a seasonal pattern, what does this look like? So it applies to recurrent major depressive disorder. And there has been a regular temporal time relationship between the onset of the depressive episodes in the disorder and a particular time of year. They specifically say in the fall or winter. They said do not include cases in which there's an obvious effect of seasonally related psychosocial stressors, aka regularly being unemployed every winter. Interesting that they're like, oh, you experience this environmental feature.
That's what's really your stressor.
Not the same thing. Yeah, not the same thing.
Not the lack of sunlight and UV and...
Yeah, and so it talks, so it talks about, like, the specifier with seasonal pattern can be applied to the pattern of major depressive episodes. The essential feature is onset and remission of the episodes at a characteristic time of year. So there's a lot of specifiers here, and it talks about over in the last 2 years. 2 major episodes have occurred that demonstrate the temporal relationship. So they're saying across 2 years, if you're noticing a depressive episode at the onset of a specific season, you might be sad.
Yeah.
You might have seasonal affective disorder. They don't call it that in the DSM, though.
It feels like what they're really trying to make a rule out of is everything that isn't the sun. Like, even when I hear a specific time of year, I think, well, what if that's a grief anniversary?
Right.
Or, something like that, that's just their body is primed and cued to, well, every year this thing happens, so I'm anticipating and assuming, and so it's more...
Which then brings us back to all the endless comorbidities. If you experience trauma and you experienced trauma in the fall or winter season, and you experience depressive symptoms across 2 years in that, is it not this?
Well, I guess you would know by experimenting with sunlight. If sunlight really drastically helped, and I do know that research says it is specifically when you first wake up. They want you to get it within the first 30 minutes of being awake. There's a whole lot of weird stuff that your brain does and chemical releases that happen if actual sunlight enters your pupils. So no sunglasses or anything. In fact, they even say don't even wear glasses, because our glasses can kind of mess with...
I'm just supposed to raw dog the sun into my eyeballs?
Yep. And even so, another thing is I'll recommend sitting in front of a window. Like, a lot of people are like, I have to go outside. Like, I can't get outside first thing in the... Just go sit in front of a window and let the sunlight hit you. But that's what I would be curious about. Try that for a month. Does it actually help? And if it doesn't, and every October, let's talk about what has happened in Octobers in your life that maybe is leading to an anticipation of your body, your mind having this response.
Sure. That's really interesting. And the other interesting thing, too, that they're saying in here is that it varies with latitude, age, and sex. Prevalence increases with higher latitudes. Age is also a strong predictor of seasonality, with younger persons at higher risk for winter depressive episodes.
Interesting.
Which I'm just for why? Is it coping strategies? To young people? Or is it our brains aren't fully formed? I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
I not know. So that is kind of the home base in which we're kind of talking about, which I think everybody relates to, right? It's dark out. It feels like it's midnight. It feels like it's Alaska and Delco right now, and I might be having some sad feelings about it. You know what I mean?
Even as you brought that up about kids, I was like, all right, so what if they don't socialize as much if it's winter? That would totally impact a kid in a much different way. And
you can't go outside.
You can't go when I was a kid, that was all you did. We went to Granite Run Mall.
Rest in peace.
And we hung outside. Yeah, what has happened to... We can't even get into that. It's a whole grief episode.
It's the Edge now. It's the Edge. It's an at-home store. Why are at-home stores so big? They're like 3 times the size that they need to be, because I feel like I'd be walking around there and I'm just looking at a bunch of crap right now. Anyway.
Buy stuff.
I love buying stuff.
Buy stuff.
Yeah, so the research that I found was talking about bright light therapy, which they refer to as BLT, which just makes me hungry.
Put it on some rye.
I would smash a BLT right now. So they talk about bright light therapy for seasonal affective disorder and beyond. This was put out by the National Library of Medicine. So this is actual research and not bullshit that you find on memes and all of that stuff. So I would highly recommend like looking at people that have actually done some kind of research.
I feel like when we do research-based things, we should get you a little horse, like your high horse.
Yeah, I'm on that bitch right now.
And we should just put them right on the back.
Not that it's everything, because here's my high horse soapbox. You also have to understand the context, and this is something I learned in grad school. You need to understand the context in who published this, who they work for, who they're funded by, right? So that's
the politics behind the research.
Very important thing. So you might read something that is like a randomized control trial that is on the National Library of Medicine, PubMed, blah 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 blah. Those MFers could be bought out.
Yeah.
Right? So they're going to produce also...
Research costs money.
Also, soapbox, nobody ever produces or rarely publishes failures of things. You know, when things aren't really going well or had disastrous results, right? Because you have to, like, submit this to a review board, and they may or may not say, yeah, you're
My
cool.
favorite thing about research of all time is when they report a bunch of stuff, but then in the exceptions and things to consider, they'll be like, but you might also want to know that we did this research very poorly, and so therefore this data might not... And you're... So
it's like every research article you'll ever read is just like, needs to be confirmed with a more rigorous study. And I'm like, cool, so you just put out a bunch of preliminary results that now people on the internet are going to pull.
And quote and say, research found. Correlation between.
Damn, we should talk about research.
That actually would be a good thing, is to go through like a research.
How can we be an informed citizen? That would be my question. How can you be an informed human being?
Which is then being a good citizen. I always get so nervous about my depth perception when we do that.
All the time on the pod.
Talk about anxiety.
So mind you, I am reading one article, okay, about this. Uno. So, take it with a grain of salt. If we can put a little salt shaker on the screen, that'd be sick, Tom. He starts typing. So this goes on to say that there has been research done since the 1980s on bright light therapy, and that it's been proven to be effective, and it's recognized as a first-line therapeutic modality. How it is effective is what they're saying is that it shifts your circadian rhythm, and it's also been associated with serotonin reuptake. Mm-hmm. So that is also, if we were to go back to like anxiety, depression, and then drug treatments, we're talking about lack of serotonin in some cases, depending on diagnoses. And so, I think with the depressive disorders, not a lot of serotonin. We want you to get some serotonin. So maybe we shine bright light in your eyeballs with no glasses, and maybe you'll be a happier person. So they've done a lot of research. It was incorporated into the DSM at one point, but now it's kind of been thrown under major depressive disorders. So it used to have its own separate diagnosis. Yes. So I think that that's really interesting. And so this article is looking at what are some studies that have looked at bright light therapy, and has it been effective, basically. And so it talks about the history of it. There's a lot of discussion about number of lux. So I guess I don't know, what is the lux? Can you look that up? Like, what is that referring to? Is it wattage? Like, is it? I don't know.
It's a unit of measurement for the intensity of light in a specific area, also known as illuminance or illumination.
Okay, so lux refers to illumination, and so that's what a lot of these studies are looking at. They're looking at, like, how much illumination do you need? How much do you need it? When do you need it? Right? So they're looking at all these things, and so
that's what I was curious about, because I know it's effective. I know that research shows that it's effective, but I think it's like most things. Now the problem is, out of all the products, if you go on Amazon and you look up depression lamp, it's endless.
It's a thing. And so,
and some of them are just salt lamps. They're not even like they're just salt. So it's hard then to know. So it made me super curious. Okay, what is an actual legitimate, and how do they say you need to use it? Duration, all of that.
So they're describing the initial parameters. So it says, over the years, the conditions for bright light therapy, BLT, shout out sandwiches, have been optimized. So this is summarized by some people who came up with a beautiful table that I'm going to read you in 2011. So their parameter is a light source. It's a fluorescent light box with a diffusion screen. The intensity, the standard treatment is 10,000 lux for 30 minutes. But there's also an alternative treatment that they've researched where it's 2,500 lux for 1 to 2 hours with full spectrum visible light. They angled it 30 degrees from the line of gaze. You're not looking directly into the light. As the illuminance delivered to the cornea is dependent on distance, the user sits at a distance of 12 to 24 inches. So basically what we're saying, in order for bright light therapy to be effective, it needs to be 10,000 lux.
For a 30-minute dosage.
A 30-minute dosage, and then it says morning treatment with time varying depending on intensity of light. So morning treatment, 30 minutes every day will help with specific things. So
I could see where you could really incorporate that to be, like I could see setting up like a yoga mat right in front of a lamp like that and starting journaling or stretching or just laying there and letting yourself sleep another 30 minutes in the morning.
But this talked about it, but it said illuminance delivered to the cornea. So that's your eye. So they're saying that you need to be 12 to 24 inches away, and I would argue with your eyes open.
Yeah, that's a good point.
For the light to be delivered to your eyeballs. And they say, though, the length of treatment is unclear, but the data suggests symptoms should begin to remit within the first week, and cessation may lead to relapse. So one recommendation is to begin in the autumn and continue through the spring. So maybe you're a person that has this diagnosis or have noticed this pattern within yourself. You need to go find yourself a lamp that hits 10,000 lux. So probably not a salt lamp. And we sit in front of it for 30 minutes every single day at the onset of a time that you know is challenging for you.
Sit and read a book.
Sit and read a dang book. So it's widely considered the first line of treatment for this. Some studies have had really good effects, like in one study, the majority of patients who received bright light therapy for the 4-week study reached symptom remission. And remission was defined as like 50% reduction.
That's pretty significant.
50% reduction is crazy. And then a final overall score of 8 or lower on, they use like a sadness. They use the SAD, which is some type of structured interview.
And if any of you decide to actually experiment with this and try this out, please keep us in the loop. Like, take notes and let us know how it goes.
Yeah, and it's funny too because they also talk about in here reimbursement for light boxes and stuff like that. So if you're a person
For your insurance
I
company.
didn't even think about like equitable access to a damn light box. That's my privileged brain. So they were saying that like an increasing number of private insurance companies view light therapy with a high intensity as medically appropriate for patients that meet the criteria for SAD. So I don't know, maybe you could get it reimbursed. I don't know if you want to fight that battle because I don't know. I bet you if we did a preliminary Amazon search, we might be able to find one of those babies for cheaper than we realize.
That's the next thing, is to see what do we find on Amazon. But it is very interesting. I mean, I always recommend people to just kind of find sunlight naturally, but it's just not always a possibility, and depending on where you live, you might not have window access like that. So
yeah, or even like say maybe you're not somebody that has great mobility, right? Like you have a wheelchair and maybe you don't have like a handicap accessible home, right? So you can't go outside without assistance.
Or hell, if your depression is so bad, I mean, that's where it gets to, where even leaving the bed is too tough. So even starting that.
My legs hurt. So yeah, I think that that's where it's like, should we put our bed in front of a like east facing light source and hope and open that window and
or just get a dog. That's my other thing. That's what they'll do. First thing in the morning, they get you outside. They need at least a 10-minute walk, and
it's true. He stands over me like a little gargoyle and just waits for me to breathe differently and signal that I'm up for the day.
Oh yeah. You're good at your home, buddy.
Yeah. So I think, wow, that really made you laugh, Tom.
Oh, I'm sorry. I opened my eyes too loud.
Yes. That is Dennis to a T.
I sense that you opened your eyes.
Yeah, so I think that what's great about
He's such a good boy.
taking the time to like look into that is honestly, it sounds like, okay, so maybe you don't have the diagnosis, like maybe you don't have a major depressive disorder, but maybe you notice like some type of variation of like depression symptoms around certain times of year. Like, could just a general person
Even
benefit?
For your energy levels, like not even mood but just if your energy levels, like you said, of adjusting to the shift in time. And in the evenings, that's when I notice it the most. In the summertime, my 6 p.m. sessions come, I'm like, let's go, baby, we've got all night.
Yes.
Now I'm like, is it 9 p.m.? Why are you seeing me at 6 p.m.? It's so late, but it's only 6
like,
p.m.
why is it? I look at the clock and it's like, why do I feel like I've lost the will to live?
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, it's because it's winter. Yeah. So I think that would be great, like for everybody. And that's also like, shout out, the Vault with like their red light therapy and all these things.
Shout out Vault Recovery Room. They have
December
so
4th.
many amazing things coming. They have literally an entire upstairs dedicated just to recovery and wellness.
I really hope that I'm dying to see the membership options. That's what I'm most interested to see. So
maybe there's a grandfather in week where like we get a week to try it out.
That would be great. So I think that there's a lot of different things that you could do. Like if you're experiencing seasonal depression, you could get a Lux lamp probably from anywhere and sit in front of it.
Maybe we'll even ask Sabrina and Matt about that. They've done so much research on the infrared, on the red light therapies.
Yeah, like is the red light, like is that Lux? Like, because a lot of the lights that they were talking about, I think in this research was like yellow light. Like when AI told me about this stuff, like they didn't even say red light.
Our friend AI.
Yeah. Yeah, so I don't know, but I think that would be a really good thing that people could kind of like look at and be like, hey, I'm having a hard time right now. Like maybe that would be beneficial. But then that would also like lead me to other questions of like how beneficial would it be in general to have starting your day with 30 minutes of allocated time of like self-care, slowing down, meditation. You know what I mean?
Regardless of what it is.
Regardless of whether the light is there's light blasting in your cornea. how beneficial would that be for a lot
We
of
all
people?
know it would all be good for us. That's just so hard to do.
Yeah, it is. The discipline's the hardest part, because that's the other thing. Like, these people did a 4-week study that they probably got paid for, right? So that's probably why they did it so conscientiously for so long. It also helps when another person's providing the lamp and they're doing all these things,
Yeah.
right? So that's it's hard to be dedicated when you're depressed. So if you're maybe need extra support and you're a person that is able to advocate for that, then maybe like be a good friend and be like, I bought you this sad lamp for the holidays.
It's a good reminder of just as the holidays are coming up, check in on one another.
Check in on your wins.
Maybe if you're going to do something, make it more wellness focused. It's a good message to send to everybody that you're deserving of something like that.
Yeah, and I would also encourage people, and this is a shift that's happened in my family. We've moved away from like things, giving each other things. We would rather share experiences and spend time together. I think that that's a better gift. That's something that you remember, right? Like, how many toys do we really remember from our childhood? I have a couple that stick out that like I have like, you know, certain memories surrounding, but I think that like connection and engagement is currency that's not often
it's all about.
exchanged. And that's what we should be doing. And if you're looking for glimmers or you're having a hard time, like, you're not going to get that from buying a pair of Uggs. Well, I might a little bit, but it's not going to last.
And maybe on a final note for that, if you're not receiving something or thinking of, give back to others in that way. I feel like, especially with this, everything that's coming up, sometimes you feel like you don't have the ability to change a lot about your mood or about circumstances, like winter is going to be winter type of a thing.
Yeah.
But giving back to others, gratitude tools always do.
Yeah.
Go help an animal. Go like...
There's
go clean
so
your
much-
closet and get the linens you don't need and
You
donate
know what's
them.
really nice that people don't realize? People get a lot of like coupons and things for like free ham, free turkeys, like at the grocery store or like through other things. You can donate that to your local shelter.
Yeah.
I'm one person. I got 2 people in the house on a regular basis. Like, I'm not going to eat a whole fucking turkey.
Yeah.
Somebody else could use that. Or even one thing that my mom never, like, I love this about her. I never considered it, but I had like a bunch of old magazines that I was just like, I'm not going to read these magazines. She was like, go drop them off at like a basically I don't want to say old folks home, a retirement home. Drop them off. They're going to read them. You know,
I was thinking crafts. That was my first thing.
No, but it was like just like dry, like, you know, you got nice stuff that's lying around, puzzles, things like that. You know, I dropped it off. The secretary was like,
Yeah,
I'll
go
give
give
this
back.
to our activities department. And I was like, yeah, man, like
Right?
that would probably make people feel good.
Heck yeah.
And get a buddy to do it with you. It's
Yeah,
better
involve
in
somebody.
pairs. I don't know if we even talked for 45 minutes because the timer's not on. So we're just raw dogging life right now. It's been a little bit.
Well, this has been another episode with yours truly, and we've loved having you here. Until next time, stay safe.
Yeah, signing Nikita and Kelsey signing off. I'm not gonna do that.